Ah, you've decided to join us. Welcome. The first thing I need to tell you is that this is not a presentation of the entire story. Instead, we will be hopping on and hopping off at selected points throughout the book. Each stop will last 15 or 20 minutes, and then we are on our way again. Let's hop on now, and I'll show you what I mean. Our first stop is, logically, somewhere near the beginning of the story. And you should know this. Something very unusual has occurred. Actually, lots of odd things have been going on. One of which is that there's been this strange cat keeping an eye on the house of the Dursleys at number 4 Privet Drive. There is absolutely nothing strange about the Dursley house, if you were to ask the Dursleys. But the cat has been there all day, watching, waiting. Now it is late in the evening. The houses have all darkened. Suddenly there's a pop, and the figure of a wizard in a purple gown has appeared. Albus Dumbledore takes out a small, silver-colored box, holds it high in the air, and one by one extinguishes the street lights. He sees the cat and chuckles. "Oh, I should have known." He comes over and sits by the cat. There is another pop, and the cat has transfigured into a witch. It is Professor McGonagall from Hogwarts School of Wizardry and Witchcraft. "How did you know it was me?" she asked. "Ah, well, Professor McGonagall, I have never seen a cat sit so stiffly," said Dumbledore. "Well, you would be stiff too if you had to sit on a brick wall all day," said Professor McGonagall. "Would you care for a lemon drop? I find them rather tasty," said Dumbledore. "No, thank you," said Professor McGonagall stiffly. They sat in silence, thinking of the events of the day. For some, it had been a day of celebration. But for the Potter family, it has been a day of tragedy. Dumbledore has made the decision to bring the 1-year-old Harry to live with his nearest relatives, people that are very, very different from the wizarding world of Harry's parents. "I've come to bring Harry to live with his aunt and uncle. They are the only relatives he has now." "Oh, Dumbledore, no, you can't mean that. Not with these people," cried Professor McGonagall. She stood up and pointed to the house. "Dumbledore, please, you can't do that. I've been here all day. You couldn't find people who are less like us anywhere. And they have this young son. He was screaming at his mother for sweets and kicking her all the way up the street. Oh, no, not Harry Potter. To live here." "I think this is where he should be," said Dumbledore firmly. "These people will be able to explain to him what has happened when he's older. I'll be giving them this letter." "So, you've written them a letter, have you?" said Professor McGonagall in astonishment as she sat back down on the wall. "Honestly, Dumbledore, do you really think you can even come close to explaining what has happened in a letter? These people will never understand him. This boy will be famous. He will be a legend. It wouldn't surprise me at all if this became known as Harry Potter Day in the years to come. Everyone in our world would know his name." "You've expressed it perfectly," said Dumbledore. He looked at her seriously. "What has happened is enough to turn anyone's head. He would be famous before he can even walk. Fame given to him for something he can't even recall. It'd be so much better if he can just grow up away from all this. It will give him time to be ready for what is ahead." Professor McGonagall started to speak, faltered, and then said, "I suppose you're right, but tell me, Dumbledore, how are you arranging to bring the boy here?" She studied his cloak as if she thought he might be smuggling Harry in underneath it. "Hagrid is bringing him." "But Dumbledore, do you think Hagrid is the right person to trust with something like this?" "Yes, I do, Professor. I would trust Hagrid with my very life," replied Dumbledore. "I know his heart is in the right place," said Professor McGonagall, but we both know he can be a little careless. He does tend to— Wait a moment. Did you hear that?" The silence of the night was broken by a low rumbling in the distance. The sound grew as it got closer. They both looked up and down the streets to see what was causing the noise. There was a tremendous roar, and they looked up into the sky. They suddenly saw a huge motorcycle dropping out of the clouds. It rolled to a stop in front of them. Yes, the motorcycle was huge, but it didn't compare to the man riding it. Nearly twice the height of a normal man and massively wide, he looked— well, he was just too big to be loud. And he looked like something wild. Tangled, bushy, dark hair covering his face and head. His hands were as big as trash can lids, and the leather boots he was wearing matched the size of baby dolphins. "Ah, Hagrid," said a relieved Dumbledore. "So glad you're here. So, tell me, how did you come by this motorcycle?" "Borrowed it, sir," said the giant as he climbed off the motorcycle, "from young Sirius Black. So, I've got him, sir." "Did you run into any difficulty?" "No, sir. House was in pretty bad shape, but I got there early enough. The muggles are just starting to swarm around it. But don't worry, he's fine, sir. Wouldn't you know, he fell asleep just as we was flying over Bristol." Dumbledore and Professor McGonagall leaned forward and looked over at the bundle of blankets. Inside, just visible, they could see a baby boy, fast asleep. And there, just under the hair, they could see a distinctively shaped cut. It looked like a bolt of lightning. "Is this—" whispered Professor McGonagall. "Yes," said Dumbledore. "It will be with him for the rest of his life." "There must be something we could do, you know," said Professor McGonagall. "I don't think so. Scars are pretty handy every now and again. I have one myself right here." He pointed to his knee. "If you look at it just so, it's an exact map of the London Underground. Well, perhaps we had better get on with this." Dumbledore picked Harry up in his arms and faced the Dursley house. Sir, could I just have a moment to say goodbye to him, sir?" asked Hagrid. He lowered his great, shaggy head and bent down over Harry, whose face was then buried in a very scratchy, whiskery kiss. Hagrid straightened up. He looked like a wounded dog. He let out a howl of pain. "Oh, shish!" hissed Professor McGonagall. "You'll wake up the muggles." "Oh, sorry," sobbed Hagrid as he took out a large red handkerchief and covered his face with it. But I can't. It's just that Lily and James dead. And then there's poor little Harry off to live with muggles." Yes, Hagrid, but please, get a hold of yourself, please, or they'll see us here," whispered Professor McGonagall. She gave his arm a gentle pat. Hagrid was trembling. Professor McGonagall was blinking as the tears fell, and The sparkle that usually twinkled from Dumbledore's eyes was nowhere to be seen. They moved toward the house. Dumbledore carefully laid Harry down next to the door. They stood for a long time looking down at the little boy who lay sleeping at their feet. "Well," said Dumbledore finally, "I think that will be all. We've no more business here. We may as well be on our way. Join the festivities." Dumbledore knelt down. He carefully tucked the letter inside the bundle of blankets. After a gentle brush of his hand over the baby's forehead, he stepped back to join the other two. "Yeah," said Hagrid in a very muffled voice. "I'll just head out now and get this bike back to Sirius. Good night, Professor McGonagall. Professor Dumbledore, sir." He brought out his handkerchief one more time, wiped his eyes, hoisted himself onto the motorcycle, and the engine roared to life. With a roar and a blast of air, it shot off into the night sky. "Thank you, Professor McGonagall. I shall be seeing you very soon again," said Dumbledore, nodding to her. Professor McGonagall was only able to blow her nose in reply. Dumbledore smiled sadly at her and then made his way back down the street. When he reached the corner, he paused, pulled out the silver putter-outer, and clicked it once. A dozen balls of light sped away toward their street lamps, and Privet Drive resumed its well-lit appearance. He could make out the form of a tabby cat as it slinked its way around the corner of the house. He could just see the little bundle resting on the Dursleys' doorstep. "Good luck, Harry," he whispered softly. He then turned smartly on his heel, and with a sweep of his cloak, he disappeared. The neatly trimmed hedges of Privet Drive lay silent, tidy under the inky sky. This was the very last place you would expect astonishing things to happen. Harry Potter lay nestled in his blankets and slept on without waking up. One of his tiny hands grasped the letter beside him. He lay there, sleeping, not knowing he was special, not knowing of his fame, not knowing that soon he would be awakened by Mrs. Dursley's startled scream as she put out the empty milk bottles, nor that for quite some time to come he would be poked and prodded by his older cousin Dudley. He couldn't know that there were people gathering in secret, meeting quietly all over the country, and raising their glasses, and they were saying in hushed voices, "To Harry Potter, the boy who lived."